You're listening to the Soju Sessions on the Soju Talk Nation podcast feed. I'm your host, Crispy, also known as Crispy Wonton or simply just Anton. And on today's episode, Max returns to the show, returns to the Soju Talk Nation, returns to Kpop. Yes, Max has been known to take a break from time to time, but he is here on his triumphant return with WJSN Chocome Super Yuppers. And, we get into the absurd, we get into the weird, we get into the fun and light of WJSN Chocome, songs like this, and kind of the difference between taking yourself a little too seriously in music and in K-pop, and just being self-aware and just having fun with it and playing into the bit. We catch up on life and kind of see where Max is at, what he's been up to, what music he's been listening to, and really just a nice starting off point for 2022. Kind of looking at the past a bit and then moving forward, hoping for the best, hoping for an exciting year, for him, for myself. And it was just a nice life catch up to have Max back on the show. So, hope you guys all enjoy. We're kind of all over the place in this episode, but I think it's very fitting with how all over the place the Chocome song was. So enjoy. Coming up, my chat with Max on WJSN Chocome Super Yuppers on the Soju Sessions. Joining Soju Sessions and making his return to the Soju Talk Nation podcast, to K-pop in general, we have an amazing human being with a deep, sultry, sexy, sensual voice.
Ooh.
We have one Mod Max from the UK. Welcome, Max.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, man, it's been a minute. How are you?
Been a while. Not doing too bad, obviously. Back home, managed to get my room set up, so this is going to be the setup for a little while. Maybe see it again.
It looks great. We have the is it a beach towel flag?
Something. I thought that's my curtains.
Curtains. Depth perception is a thing. So
my room is very small, so
it looks very spacious from here. I will.
Of course.
Just like your heart, and opening it up to all of us here on the show. So, let's jump into some wide open conversations about something very strange this week. Something that, caused a lot of conversation. WJSN Chocome made their triumphant return with Super Yuppers. This is a subunit of WJSN Cosmic Girls consisting of Luddy, depends on who you are. Shout out to Zondi, because it's a joke on the server. Subin, Dayoung, and Yerim. So the four of them, very very attractive, very good looking females for this group. But the main premise for Chocome is that they are kind of a very high energy, eccentric, magic girl type of group where it's kind of a joke, but it's very exaggerated, it's very intentional. Their first song was Humph. That was a trip. It was absolutely a trip. They follow it up with this, which is kind of a retro vibe, in the trend, but still very weird, very high-pitched kind of song in some areas. Max,
definitely.
What are your overall thoughts and feelings about WJSN Chocome and Super Yuppers?
Well, Super Yuppers is certainly a song that was released this year. What the fuck? What the fuck? I don't have many other ways to put it. Like, it's the so bad that you kind of have to like it, and it's like so cringy and cutesy that it's like endearing at the same time. Musically, awful. Could not bear listening to it for the first 30 seconds, and I went, this is a joke. And then I enjoyed it. And that's just, you gotta let go sometimes to appreciate the true art form that is super yuppers.
There's absolutely an art with this idea of being self-aware with what you're doing. I think self-aware to the point of it being a joke even to the members. On the main show, they did talk about the song. They didn't particularly like the song, but they could see the value in K-pop doing fun, jokey, don't take yourself too seriously releases like this. For me, I kind of enjoy the high energy, eccentric, especially when I know what I'm getting into. Nonsensical music, so it was kind of fire. I still listen to it, but I also am very aware that they are doing things to evoke a very specific type of feeling and emotion out of a lot of people, which is just kind of the weirdness of K-pop. What did you think about the balance with them hitting the trend of retro using a lot of the synths and keys that have been popularized over the past year, but doing so in a such exaggerated way?
It's like genius of some sort, like twisted genius. Whoever came up with the idea or was creating it was just pulling all of the strings, and it's just so much fun, and it's like really well done. But it got to a point where you kind of couldn't tell that it was a joke, but you knew it was a joke, and that's like the perfect point where with trends and the kind of mockery of the trends, like they mash together. It really is good.
My question for you, with songs like this, and kind of the parallel to online communities and niche internet cultures, how do you feel like Super Yuppers either is a satire for a lot of that, kind of showing the community, kind of holding up a mirror to the community, as much as it is music that is legitimately being promoted right now on music shows and across all radio stations in Korea? How do you feel like those two things run in parallel to each other, with the international success and the domestic success of a song like this?
I feel like obviously it's very clearly satire, but just because it's satire doesn't mean it can't be an enjoyable song. It doesn't. There's obviously similarities with a lot of songs that have been popular over the past year or so with the retro trend, and while it's not probably as refined or as musically amazing as some of the other songs, it definitely holds its own. But I don't think you could go and say, "Oh, this is a terribly made song," because it's not. It's clearly took thought and effort into making something like that, even though it is a bit of a joke.
I think from our perspective, because we're seeing it from an international lens, it's very niche. So K-pop is very niche in general. But going even one step further and kind of being a reflection of K-pop, of what people think K-pop is, and then how a lot of that runs parallel with what people think anime is. This definitely falls into being self-aware, being very exaggerated, and then if somehow Western markets see this, I don't know how, because I don't think it's something that's very popularized in that sense, but this is one that they point to as, oh, it's K-pop doing a weird thing again. I think in a good way. All this to say, I think the strength of the song and the reason why it was so popular on the server specifically, because WJSN is the characterization and kind of the depths of a fandom that, I don't know how we all congregated and grew to this degree. But what are your thoughts on how this song became really successful and popular on the server specifically, with the fan base at Soju Talk?
Well, we've got a bit of a cult for Cosmic Girls on the server as people have become more and more aware. And obviously, with the fandom, you're obviously going to take everything with a pinch of salt, and you may not like the song as much if it was made by one person, but you've got obviously the bias, even if it's not intentional, and you will like it more. The only reason this song worked at all is because it had a fan base beforehand. If that was the first song they ever released, you wouldn't be able to tell it was satire. You wouldn't be able to. Well, you probably could, but still, to not the same degree, and you wouldn't have the same level of support because it's been a commercially successful kind of venture, hasn't it? With Chocome.
Yeah, yeah. We just only definitely has that backing of a strong fan base. I think even domestically, they're just well known. All the members do a number of things across Korean entertainment, whether that's acting, variety, or even how popular they are with the subunits. But I think all of this kind of culminated into let's do it again. They did Humph in 2020. It feels like that song came out 10 years ago when in reality it's less than 2 years ago. I don't understand. I went
weird.
back and watched it. Man, that song really pushes kind of the boundary of my brain, right? The crew went on to kind of discuss the song. They used a number of metaphors. A number of food metaphors with Chicago
Of
pizza
course.
being a little too much, a little too deep dish with what is it, too much sauce, too much cheese, too much bread. And this song being a little too much, how do you feel like this song sits on the scale of a meme versus the merits and qualities of a song itself?
I think without the meme, the song would not stand up. It's too much of something, like obviously the pizza analogy, but the combination makes it work. Because if it was purely a meme and it wasn't made well, it would be terrible. And if it was no meme at all, it would just fall completely flat. So they go hand in hand.
I will say so Doug did mention Humph previously, the previous release, and that having a killing moment. I think, okay, this is, I don't want to analyze the song too much because I don't think the song is one of those art pieces that you have to detail. But I think there is something very valuable in Humph, even as weird as it was. If you've seen it, if you watched it, if you listen to the song at least a handful of times, you know exactly that killing moment in the chorus. I'm not going to sing it because I don't want to offend anyone's ears.
Oh, please do.
But with this song in particular, I do think the music quality of the song is that it is hitting a lot of the retro beats that we've heard. So it's a very fluid song. There is no one killing moment, but it feels like the song kind of vibes throughout. Vibes used very loosely here, of course. And with all that, I'm a very visual person, so I love the music video. I like the way things are kind of incorporated. How do you feel like the music video came together with using a lot of the themes of a superhero, saving the day, doing good, but also essentially being magic girls in anime? I think that's something they're leaning into.
Yeah.
But they transform and they do things. How did that all hit you, Max?
It reminded me of like an anti-bullying campaign. Like, being bad is wrong. You shouldn't do stuff like steal someone's food or whatever. It was like that. And it was just...
You shouldn't overeat. You shouldn't steal someone's car.
I don't know what they were trying to do. It was... my brain is simply not large enough to comprehend the true majesty of the art piece before me. But obviously you got the little kind of very anime-y kind of costumes, the superpowers. It fit the kind of theme perfectly and made it clear that this is what they were going for. But I don't know how many more songs you can make like this. So,
well, you'd be surprised. So, but in all seriousness, I do think this is one of those songs that does help distinguish, different periods within a year of K-pop, right? Because if you took December, January as one period, we had holiday music. We also had a lot of R&B inspired music, very chill, very mellow, wintry type songs. And then coming into this week, we had Wua, excellent kind of K-pop, traditional K-pop song. And then last week we had Kepler. And now I don't think, well, this is the first entry of the meme, joke, fun, really lighthearted music of the year. And I think there is value in that as far as being something different, as far as being something K-pop is known for. And I think as long as you kind of have fun with it, you don't take it too seriously, I think we're gonna be okay.
I think that's the reason that I would personally think this song is better than the Kepler song.
Ooh, that
Because
is the
I
thing.
don't like the Kepler song. I think it's pretty bad. But this song knows it's bad and plays into being bad, and hence I like prefer it as a whole piece. So that kind of goes to speak about how meme songs can actually be more enjoyable.
I have to follow up. So with this song being very self-aware and the Kepler song, Wa Da Da, there are elements of it where I do feel like they're playing into certain themes. I think they're taking themselves a little too seriously. What about those moments, particularly the oh part, that just did not work for you?
It's just on the Kepler song, I don't think I'm very against the kind of noisy choruses repeating certain noises and phrases and random sounds. You're trying to be so serious while saying this ridiculous stuff. If you're gonna say ridiculous stuff, be ridiculous while doing it. So
yeah, and I think that's the line, right? I think there is definitely a line of taking yourself seriously with a clear direction. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Where I think the production of the song takes itself seriously in the sense that it knows exactly what it wants to be from start to finish. Where there are moments of certain songs, not necessarily the Kepler song, that evolve into being memes, but that was not the original intention. And then you have kind of this push and pull of whether or not the song is good or bad, because the context always matters, right? Now let's move on to just general fun in K-pop, because I know we're feeling a kind of way with this Chocome song, but there are a number of examples in the past of songs that have that are made specifically for being fun, being memey, but also that kind of evolved, kind of like we talked about, into a joke. I'm gonna run through a couple of them. Well, let's start with this one. So we have Rain with Gang. It ultimately turned into a meme that everyone kind of enjoyed. But I recently rewatched the summary by DK. I think it's DKTV, of how that song became a meme, and Rain took himself incredibly seriously when he first released it. He thought he was fire. In comparison to a Chocome song, and songs similar to this, how do you feel like that? I'm lost for this. How do you feel like Rain's song Gang compares to songs that are intentionally trying to be funny, in the scope of how K-pop is received?
I think if it's intentionally trying to be funny, and people were in on the joke, and people were like, everyone's in on it, it'll be like, oh, this is fun. It's a bit of a harmless thing. But if you release utter just trash and it's a joke, and then you stick by it, you then become like an issue, and then you as a person become a joke. So obviously he eventually kind of picked up that it was like, oh, this song isn't actually that serious. We'll mess around with it a bit, and then remixes and stuff. But for the period of time when he thought it was like, oh, I'm spitting bars and stuff like that, one of the worst things I've ever seen.
I did not remember how bad it was until I rewatched the video a couple times this week. Wow. That's all I got. I mean, well, because the idea is that he made this with the intention, thinking that he's going to make a super fire hip hop trap song that fits the trends, but ultimately he was behind the trends in so many ways, whether that was the music production or the lyrics, the visual presentation, the camera movement. He thought was really cool, which in a vacuum maybe, but that's also a very dated way to kind of film choreography. And I think the tipping point of all of that, at least had him reflect on his choices. And I think that's where it kind of turned into a very charming moment for him, where I was like, okay, I did something ridiculous. And in a lot of ways, it kind of turned his career at that point. Not to say that Rain was struggling, but no, we all know Rain now in a totally different light had he
Yeah.
just thought that he was spitting fire in bars. I'm going to run through a couple of other examples,
Mm.
and we'll kind of see how it goes. So we did have
Yeah.
Humph from 2020. We also
Yeah.
had Oh My Girl with Banhana.
Ah.
Yes, the subunit with Binny, Aren, and Hyojin. But I always
So?
mispronounce her name. I apologize. The leader of Oh My Girl with Banana
Mm.
Allergy, Gugudan with Chocoko, and then we have Orange Caramel, who their entire history is just to do these meme type songs, with Catalina, I think, being the most popular one.
Definitely.
If you've never seen that music video, just know Sushi.
Mm.
That's all. And then we have, of course, the king himself, Psy, Gangnam Style, global, international
Yeah.
success. And then followed up by Gentleman. Not the same level of success, but you can definitely tell that that's his lane. And I respect that. And then we have
Yeah.
kind of the modern weirdness that somehow makes it into the consciousness of Korean entertainment every now and then. We have Narazo. All right. So kind of running through all of those really quickly. What do you see are kind of the similarities and patterns with a lot of those types of releases, and kind of the differences that would have very specific songs pop off more than others?
You gotta, like, lots of the songs, especially by girl groups, are super cutesy, like toxically sweet when it comes to it. And then there's like a fine line of how far you can go. Like the limits are pretty high, but you have to stop yourself before you reach a certain point. Like obviously the first Chocome song was like a lot. Like you were saying just earlier, cannot comprehend it kind of stuff. Banana Allergy, masterpiece, joke of a song, still amazing. And Catalina is obviously, everyone knows it. It's an amazing song's a bit generous, but it's fun, it's enjoyable. We'll listen to it sometimes. But I think the clippability, like the 5-second clip of a part of the song being really funny or unique, that's what will like define how popular or how famous a meme song is gonna get. Because you have to get the clicks, you have to get the likes, and especially with TikTok now, you have that really short window, and that's what will blow it up.
Yeah, it's kind of fun reflecting on a lot of these songs. I think I think the Orange Caramel song is about 8 years old. Gangnam Style is 10 years old this year.
Yeah,
That's wild. Again, rewatching that
Crazy.
music video today, it's dated. A lot of the cinematography
Definitely.
choices definitely feel like it was from 10 years ago. The song sounds like an EDM song from that like 2000s peak of very, what's that group? Shoot. Party rockin'.
LMFAO, yeah.
Yeah. So it's very much peak LMFAO sounding EDM.
Yeah.
But my God, the characterization I think is what carried Psy into popularity and
Absolutely.
success. And I think that is the case with all of these artists, right? It's how well are they received by the general audience? How well is their message seen and understood? And then how do they carry that into any number of appearances and the ways that we access them, right? And I think that's what separates not only these songs as being popular, but these songs with kind of the international market and Westerners, right? I think because they know that they're being silly, absurd, and ridiculous, it helps to let people in on the joke, and there is a level of levity with everything. Overall, my question for you, Max, with meme songs like this, and where's the line, between a joke that it's a joke, everyone's in on it, and then a song where it's like, oh, this guy thinks he's making fire, or this group, or this artist, and then it's just not working. Well, where's the line for you?
I think the line needs to be shown by the artist in the video. Because obviously in the songs you can't always tell if it's a joke or if it's serious. But if the video is like clearly satirical or super excessively bubbly like the Super Uppers. You can tell, but like obviously Gangnam Now is a joke, but serious video, which was just awful. He didn't see the line. He tried. He crossed it without trying. I don't know if there's like any advice I'd be able to give on like how to not do it. It's just be self-aware, don't be stupid, and maybe get a couple people to listen to it before you release it, so you don't get mocked by the public.
I think those are all very pointed pieces of advice. I think you can even extrapolate that into other areas of your life. Definitely hearing other opinions, and letting other people help you as far as guiding your choices in life is always a good thing.
For sure.
With all this like talk of just strange music and fun, like how do you feel like K-pop should lean into fun music like this more, or in a lot of ways, like why is K-pop so uniquely prepared or qualified or has the unique ability to do this as opposed to Western music?
I think a lot of the time Western artists tend to take themselves quite seriously, not always obviously with a lot of interesting stuff and jokes and stuff, but with this genre kind of built on this persona these idols put out, and obviously very public friendly, child friendly, you can push them a bit easier to be appealing to younger people because they're already appealing to younger people in that kind of way. So I think just the way in which they present themselves makes it easier for this stuff to become super successful. I don't think it's anything about the fan base particularly, because obviously Western markets ate up stuff like Gangnam Style and shit like that. So it doesn't really matter who it is. Consuming the content, it's more about the person and their willingness to make themselves less seriously.
Yeah, I think for me, the way that K-pop I think has always been perceived is it's this offshoot of Asian culture, right? I think a lot of the introduction to Asian culture for a lot of people in the West, and even myself, I'm Asian, but I grew up in the United States, was anime, was cartoons. And that is specifically based in Japanese culture. And then you slowly learn that other Eastern cultures look, sound, feel similar, even if they are very different. Korea and Japan, very different. Long history between both of those countries, but a lot of similarities with how they were eventually exported to the United States or exported to other countries, right? And I think with K-pop and Eastern media in general, I think there is a cultural touch point with how they tell jokes, right?
Yeah.
Where it's very maybe not very, but there is a self-deprecating nature to how the jokes are executed, and then how are these? What is the purpose of the joke, right? It's to bring people in, so then they can kind of reflect, like, oh yes, I can be or am just as absurd and ridiculous. And I think that is kind of the beauty in a lot of things like this, specifically with Chocome. I would be remiss if I just didn't shout out kind of the members of Chocome, because they are doing God's work. The main show did say that I think they're having a hard time keeping it together. I think Dayoung is the one who has the talking part, where she talks like an anime character. And then Anita pointed out that when she did it on stage, she laughed. She couldn't keep it together.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
Because it's absolutely ridiculous. It's hilarious, first of all. And again, kind of that nebulous blurring of like, was this anime inspired? Is this just something that Asian cultures do? But again, I don't think it's something that we should. The why or the how isn't so important. It's kind of the why and the nature of it. And I think it's the joke, right? I think that's ultimately the joke.
Yeah.
Dayoung, blonde hair, Dayoung. It's just, there's something about it. Letta.
Shout out to her.
Luda. Luddy. Again, I think Zondi is causing me problems with this pronunciation. So, God damn it, Zondi.
Absolute menace.
Subin, she looks great in her pigtails. And my bias wrecker, Yedem. blue hair. I am an XE bias because I love WJSN the Black. But this Chocome situation is just causing me so much conflict, so much crisis. But yes, shout out to those 4 girls because one, great to see them coming back with another project with music because I think the last WJSN release was Unnatural, and that was quite a long time ago. That was over half a year ago.
Something like that.
And then the Black came out a little after. Now we got some other things, so it's good to see the girls are working. Let's kind of end our K-pop discussion there because I do think, as with life, you kind of just want just enough of it, and I think with Chocome we got just enough to keep us entertained and having fun. But I think if we got like 5-10 songs of Chocome, I think that would have been a little too much. I think 2 was the right amount, so I think we're just gonna end a little Chocome discussion there. With that said, Max, hello, sir.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since we've had a chat. I know we talked offline or off recording that you ebb and flow between K-pop and trying to engage in other things, right? What are some other things that have kept you going over the past few months away from K-pop?
Anything and everything. I've been obviously listened to a rap a lot in the past, talked about that here, but obviously R&B, leaning back more into pop, a little bit more of this kind of rockish sound. Just trying to find a new sound for myself as I've grown up and obviously moved back home, not in university anymore, and just trying to, not quite new year, new me, but new situation, new outlook.
Continuing the journey, right?
Yeah.
Keeping it rolling. What other music have you listened to? What other artists have really stuck out to you over the past few months?
So I've been enjoying a lot of Frank Ocean, Tyler the Creator, liked Halsey's new album a lot. Been going back to some other artists like Taylor Swift, so 1989, love that album. Obviously Kendrick, J. Cole, those artists I always really enjoy. I don't think it was anyone else out of the ordinary, but I think that list sums up how I've been going. Oh, a little bit of a Pink Pantheress, the very hyperpop person who's been blowing up on TikTok a lot over the past year.
All right, I got two things I need to follow up on. So with Taylor Swift's album being the moment of the year for everyone emotionally, give me your emotional journey with that album. How did it hit you, and what similarities did you feel about the emotional journey that she took you through that everyone else felt, and how did it differ from your experience?
Oh, I remember Red was released when I was quite young. As 2010, 2012, was it?
I think about over 10 years ago now. Yeah, definitely.
So I was a child at that point. Because you were talking about Gangnam Style being released in 2012. I was 9, which is still ridiculous to me. So obviously heard the songs on the radio. You didn't really take in the lyrics. And as I've grown up, and obviously with this new version being released, and All Too Well, the 10-minute song being released, it's definitely a lot more emotionally kind of understandable. Kind of now understand the meanings behind the words rather than just singing along for fun. But I was never a massive fan of that album, but with this new kind of version and new kind of outlook on it, it's definitely I've gone up in my rankings of how much I enjoy it as a whole kind of art piece.
You said a lot of things about the album and how it's grown. Do you feel like the decade between the original release and this release, even though they're songs that she's resung, but also kind of newer interpretations of those songs, do you feel like that's also kind of a parallel to her own life and how coming of age stories occur universally, in the sense that you changed, I've changed in the past 10 years, and are those journeys very similar in the sense, maybe not in the sense of what Taylor Swift's gone through, but in her artistic expression of what it means to grow up over a 10-year period?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, you can tell there's a lot more I don't know, it feels much more refined. The music feels much more her rather than the label, because obviously she's left her label and it's now she has complete direct like creative control, and you can now fully understand the meaning of why she wrote the songs, why she wanted it produced that way, and it's kind of more. I don't know if it's maturity as a person, but that's definitely a factor, but definitely maturity as an artist, and definitely coming into her own with later albums as well. And this is kind of a look back, but still moving forward at the same time.
It's very fitting for the start of the year. That's a great turn of phrase. A look back and moving forward. Moving forward into a genre that is just I don't really understand it yet. I'm probably just way too old. I mean, 90 is very tough. I apologize to all the listeners. Hyperpop and the artist you mentioned earlier. Can you describe it to me, please, for a 90-year-old who just doesn't understand? Explain.
I'm not very versed in hyperpop either, but I've just heard this person. I was like, wow, this is unlike anything I've kind of heard before. It's like this psychedelic kind of fast, upbeat, very short songs. They're like 1.5 minute, 2 minutes tops. And even though they're this kind of mishmash of kind of almost, it's not chaotic, but it's like controlled madness. Is a terrible way of describing it, but that's kind of how I think of it. And it's just something about it is so addictive, and the sound is super catchy. And the Pink Pantheress has been massively blowing up because of it, and I can see this becoming a massive trend in the near future with more people picking up that kind of style. Because obviously you got the short songs, good for radio, but super addictive. Everyone wants the plays, everyone wants the clicks, and with more of this, it would go really well. But I think it can be a market that's very oversaturated very quickly.
You mentioned the short songs. Is that typical of hyperpop, or is that specifically her style of song production?
I'm not sure as a whole, but definitely hers. I think there was a kind of famous thing that she did a 7-minute concert with like 4 or 5 songs, because she doesn't have that many songs. She's a young English artist. Well, at least she's in England, and then I remember, I think this is before maybe she released her album, but she has maybe 10, 11 songs as a whole, and so turned up, 7-minute concert, went home. That's
incredible.
That's crazy.
Pink Pantheress, everyone, check her out. I'm very curious now, because I think we've heard the genre hyperpop for over a year now, a little over a year, and I still have not been able to nail down either an artist or a style, or even take on hyperpop that I don't feel like is an offshoot of something else. So of course, aespa is what always comes to mind. Yeah, but I still think that's K-pop. It's K-pop with hyperpop influence, but I can't tell you what the hyperpop elements are. All I know is that they're doing K-pop things within this categorization of hyperpop. So I'm curious now. I will check out Pink Pantheress.
They're doing the thing. They're doing the thing. It sounds good. That's all that matters.
Sounds good.
Whatever the genre might be.
Yeah, and they look great doing it. Closing things out. A little life check-in with you. How have things been going outside of the internet, outside of K-pop, outside of music? I know it's January, start of the new year. Yes, you're back home, working on some new things. Where do you stand today? How are you feeling, Max?
I'm not doing too bad at the moment. I think hoping this year is better than the last, obviously, as you always do. Obviously not in uni anymore, but job searching is not the most enjoyable, but also gives me a lot of free time to do traveling. So I've got plans throughout this year, going on holiday next week, not even next week, in 3 days. So that's something fun. I'm going to Montreal, the Grand Prix with Shinboy in June. Super excited for that kind of stuff. But now that I'm like an adult and I don't have these restrictions, the only kind of limit is the money, which is a shame, but we'll get there. And the freedom is nice, so feeling hopeful, which is new.
Oh, that's excellent. First of all, amazing that you're taking this opportunity to travel. I think that is something that, oftentimes adults, people later in their life always talk about wanting to see the world more. It's very rare that, when you have the opportunity that you take it, or you feel like, at least me personally, things have to align perfectly. Like I have to have
Mm,
this amount of funds and then I have to have everything planned out. When ultimately you kind of just have to roll with it. You have to make plans,
yeah,
hope it sticks, and then if it doesn't work out, you move on. Seeing Shinboy in June. Um,
yeah.
go into that a little bit more. The Grand Prix. Where is it at? What are the festivities and how many days are you guys going to be celebrating?
So obviously you got the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal, and as a joke, we kind of went, "Oh, we should go to a Grand Prix next year." And then Shin was like, "Montreal Grand Prix. It's closer to him than the Course of the Americas, I believe." So I was like, "I'd be down to go." And then it just kind of happened, and now I have flights booked, and we have tickets, and we have an Airbnb booked. So for the first time in my life, I'm going to be leaving the continent of Europe to meet a man I've never met in my entire life, to then drive for 7 hours to another country to watch cars go fast. Not how I pictured my year going, but I'm not complaining. I think I'm going to be there for 6 days. The Grand Prix is going to be 3 days, and I'm going to be spending some time in New Jersey, and I'll probably be chilling in New York for a while as well.
There is a beautiful metaphor in all of this where you're going to see a race and it's the pace of life, right? Where you're
Yeah, I
deciding
guess.
this year you're just going to go. Whether that's, the travels you're doing locally, or like you said, literally leaving a continent to see someone who you've never met in real life.
Yeah.
But I do also feel like, and I always want to reflect on this, that the Soju Talk Nation, the Discord server, has been this safe place for people to find connection. And I think
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
kind of just a beautiful thing where, we've interacted with each other so much over the past 2 years,
Mm.
but ultimately we've never met. But I do feel like we're all
Yeah.
friends in a lot of ways. So it does kind of, in a weird way, like simulate this school setting where we're all in this central hub and
Mm.
then talking to each other, kind of. But then different channels, different classes. I don't know. It just
I get what you mean.
it
I
just
get what you mean.
yeah, man. No, that's excellent. That's amazing. I hope you guys have a lot of fun. I hope the world calms the F
Great.
down because I thought we were out of this.
Yeah.
I was just I was living my life in October, November, December, hearing some things about people catching COVID, the Omicron, the Megatron, the Decepticon. I don't even know anymore. And now people are afraid to go out again. I've had some
Yeah.
friends who are just like, no, I'm going to stay back inside my house. I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, I
It's a bit
have
touchy.
plans. I have trips this year, so I hope to
Gotta
fulfill
hold
them.
hope they hold out. Yeah.
Yeah. Max, this is an excellent, a beautiful catch up conversation. Thank you so much for joining.
That's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's you've enlightened me with a lot of things, and I think it's good to have these types of talks once in a while where we zoom out from
Mm.
the passion of K-pop. So I do feel like there is there is a line. I think lines are something we've been talking about a lot today.
Yeah.
And kind of want to end this conversation asking you, with K-pop fandom, with fandoms in general, we have two sides of the coin. We have obsession and we have passion, right? Um, can you describe kind of you seeing that line and how one could be weary or one could be cautious not to fall too far on either side of the passion and obsession spectrum?
It feels like the kind of passion and obsession around this kind of stuff. It's a very, I don't know, the genre, at least in the kind of fandom, inspires a lot of passion and it leads often to obsession. But things can be good in moderation, but at least in obsession, I believe it gets kind of a little bit unhealthy quite quickly. So I think, and obviously too much passion is also a little bit dangerous, but I don't know if that's a thing I've kind of experienced as much, at least with people I've interacted to in this kind of sphere. When something you enjoy becomes your personality trait, that's when I believe something's gone too far. And I hope I never reach that point.
I think you're able to self-reflect and be introspective on a number of things, whether that's internally or externally. And even if you do get to the point, I think you're also open enough to allow people in to help guide and navigate all of the things. And I think that's what kind of makes you a very uniquely wonderful human being. And I appreciate all the time that we spent and been able to talk and hang out over the past 2 years. I've never met you, but we do this all the time, so it's kind of great.
Yeah. Great.
All right, man. Well, again, much appreciation for you, Max. Welcome back to the show. We're gonna have you on for a lot of other stuff, so just stay tuned, everyone. Let's sign out there. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Soju Sessions on the Soju Talk Nation podcast feed. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and continue the conversation on the Soju Talk K-pop podcast Discord. For Max, I'm Crispy, and this has been the Soju Sessions.